President, peace and development are the shared aspirations of all peoples. History has repeatedly proven that an obsession with force, relentless pressure, and wanton interference only generate more conflict and hatred. No country has the power to dictate the future of another, and no action that defies international law can be tolerated.
Mr. President, since the end of December, the whole world has been watching as the United States continues to escalate tensions and fuel hysteria around Iran, declaring that help is already on the way. What's more, in its official statements, Washington has not even tried to cover up the genuine reasons for its alleged concern over the country's internal political situation as it threatens new strikes against Iran. Today's meeting, convened by our American colleagues, is nothing more than yet another attempt to justify blatant aggression and interference in the internal affairs of a sovereign state. And if, as Washington puts it, Iran's authorities do not come to their senses, then Washington will solve the Iranian problem in its favorite way through strikes aimed at overthrowing an undesirable regime. To lend credibility to their actions and to justify them, they have invited today's briefers, individuals who have been living in the United States for some 20 years and promoting an anti-Iranian agenda in Washington's interests. These so-called briefers cannot speak on behalf of the Iranian people. We firmly reject any attempts by the U.S. to waste council members' valuable time on briefings that are meant only to serve the interests and the position of those who convened this meeting, and briefings that are in no way related to issues of international peace and security. What just took place overall was nothing more than a circus, an embarrassment, a cheap show that is unbefitting of members of the Council. Mr. President, we have carefully studied the letters circulated in the Security Council in recent days from the Iranian mission. We express our solidarity with the people of Iran and mourn all innocent victims. We see that hostile external forces are attempting to exploit the current situation in order to overthrow a government they find objectionable and destroy the Islamic Republic of Iran as a sovereign and independent state. At the same time, we note that the authorities in Tehran have declared and reaffirmed their commitment to their international obligations, including respect for human rights and ensuring conditions for the peaceful expression of public opinion, while at the same time fulfilling their inherent duty to protect citizens' lives, public order, and the country's territorial integrity. As far as we can tell, the protest momentum has begun to subside and the situation is gradually normalizing. The government of Iran has taken the necessary steps to stabilize the economic situation and has established a constructive dialogue with the public in order to address any emerging issues. Mass rallies have taken place in the Islamic Republic of Iran in support of the country's supreme leader and its independent course. The Russian Federation is convinced that today's meeting of the Council should be approached through the lens of its mandate to maintain international peace and security and uphold international law, and not through the lens of Iran's internal political affairs. Violations of the aforementioned norms and principles in the current situation are obvious. They include the extremely dangerous and irresponsible rhetoric employed in recent days by U.S. leadership, which has gone as far as openly calling for the takeover of state institutions in Iran and threats to assist the protesters. Such statements amount to nothing other than incitement to violently overthrow the constitutional order of a sovereign state. They are a gross violation of paragraphs 4 and 7 of Article 2 of the UN Charter, which prohibit the threat or use of force and establish the principle of non-interference in the domestic affairs of states. Mr. President, what is happening on the streets of Iran in recent days has gone far beyond peaceful protest. There have been documented cases of firearms use, killings of law enforcement officers as well as civilians, arson attacks on medical facilities and public institutions, as well as attacks on emergency service facilities. These actions cannot be covered up by the pretext of freedom of expression or protecting human rights. What is happening in Iran is yet another example of the use of tried and tested methods for a color revolution in which specially trained armed provocateurs transform peaceful protests into senseless violence, riots, destruction of public property, and brutal killings of police officers, state security personnel, and peaceful protesters, including children. As we have already seen repeatedly in a number of states, all these actions are either directed or supported by external forces that are interested in a so-called regime change. In the present situation, these external forces are not even bothering to conceal their involvement in violent actions, especially given that the President of the United States has openly called on protesters to take over Iranian state institutions. The U.S. and its cheerleaders are actively exploiting the economic and social difficulties faced by ordinary Iranians, difficulties caused by unlawful sanctions pressure imposed on Iran by Western states. They're using this to inflame public tensions and destabilize the domestic political situation. The current situation is clearly in line with Washington's declared policy, one supported by its allies, of maximum pressure on Tehran in order to advance their own political interests in the Middle East. They are using every means available to achieve this. And this includes not only unlawful unilateral sanctions imposed in circumvention of the Security Council and in blatant violation of the UN Charter, but also unceremonious blackmail of other states by increases in trade tariffs. Our Western colleagues are not above using the Security Council as a tool to promote their delusional agenda. A striking example of this is the attempt by the UK, France, and Germany to create the illusion of reinstating anti-Iranian Security Council resolutions through the purported triggering of the snapback mechanism envisioned in Resolution 2231 of the Security Council. Their justification for this relied on Western states' fabrications about some sort of threat to international peace and security posed by Iran's peaceful nuclear program. And this is despite the fact that the IAEA Director General has never reached such conclusions in his reports on the matter, nor found evidence of diversion of nuclear material to military purposes. And the entire crisis surrounding the implementation of the JCPOA was provoked by Washington's unilateral withdrawal from the nuclear deal in 2018. Nevertheless, the EU3 continues to promote its baseless narrative and deepen divisions within the Security Council. What is most concerning is Washington's aggressive course towards the use of military force and threats of its use against Iran. We condemn such actions, no matter what arguments are used to justify them, as a gross violation of international law and the UN Charter. We strongly urge the hotheads in Washington and other capitals who seem to be contemplating a repeat military venture to come to their senses and avoid a repetition of the tragedy of June 2025, when U.S.-Israeli aggression nearly resulted in a major nuclear catastrophe with inevitable humanitarian and environmental consequences. We demand that the United States and its like-minded partners refrain from further reckless steps, including those involving nuclear facilities. They should rather focus on providing solid assurances against further confrontation and resume joint efforts to find potential solutions. This includes addressing unfounded concerns regarding Iran's peaceful nuclear program. All of this should be done on the basis of international law and seeking a balance of all stakeholders' interests. Our country stands ready to assist this in every possible way. Mr. President, the Russian Federation decisively condemns all forms of external interference, incitement to violence, and threats of use of force against the friendly nation of Iran. We call on the conveners of today's meeting to stop making themselves out to be a global judge and put an end to their escalatory actions. Your actions risk plunging the region into even bloodier chaos that could easily spill beyond its borders. And a separate appeal to our colleagues on the Council and all UN member states. We call on them to prevent a new large-scale escalation and ensure that the Security Council is not used to justify unlawful regime change scenarios or to name and shame the legitimate authorities of a sovereign state. Thank you.
President, we have been carefully observing developments in Iran and the region in recent days. New threats to regional peace and stability are emerging at a time of heightened tensions and thus remain a serious cause of concern. Iran is an immediate neighbor of Pakistan and a brotherly country. The people of our two nations share deep-rooted historical, friendly, cultural, and religious bonds. We hope for an early normalization of the situation in Iran and express support for all diplomatic efforts aimed at regional peace and stability. A stable and peaceful Iran is in the interests of Pakistan, the region, and beyond. We have full confidence in the wisdom of the Iranian people and leadership rooted in their rich culture, ancient civilization, history, and resilience to address all challenges. President, the fundamental principles and objectives of the United Nations Charter are inviolable and sacrosanct. The UN Charter prohibits threat or use of force against other states' territorial integrity or independence, or to interfere in matters essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of states. Any external interference in the domestic affairs of states is inconsistent with international law and principles of the UN Charter. We strongly believe that all disputes must be resolved through peaceful means and in accordance with international law. Continued hostilities, use of force, and unilateral actions will only take us further away from the resolution of core issues and cause unnecessary humanitarian suffering. The threat or use of force would only aggravate the situation and undermine regional and international peace and stability. All parties must exercise restraint, act responsibly, strictly stay within the bounds of international law, and eschew any action that will be detrimental to regional and international peace and security. Diplomacy and dialogue should be the guiding principles for achieving negotiated settlement of all contentious issues in accordance with the rights, obligations, and responsibilities of the parties concerned. Pakistan has consistently advocated the primacy of diplomatic engagement and the imperative of avoiding confrontation and conflict in a region already beset by tensions and volatility. We sincerely hope that the situation in Iran will soon return to calm and normalcy, free from any internal turmoil or external pressure, and all relevant parties will return to the negotiating table to find a lasting solution to their differences based on mutual respect and understanding. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of China.
President, I thank JCPOA for her briefing and welcome the participation of the representative of Iran at today's meeting. China and Russia have made their position clear to all Council members regarding the United States invitation of the relevant briefers. Recent developments in Iran have drawn widespread attention. China has taken note of the description thereof provided by the Iranian Foreign Minister in his letter to the UN Secretary General. For some time now, the United States has continued to make statements on the situation in Iran and has openly issued threats of the use of force against Iran. As a result, clouds of war are gathering over the Middle East and the tensions in the region continue to escalate. China has always advocated adherence to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and international law. We oppose the use or threat of force in international relations, oppose imposing one's will upon other countries, and oppose any regression of the world to the law of the jungle. Sovereign equality and non-interference in internal affairs are basic principles of international law and the most fundamental norms governing modern international relations. Iran is an independent sovereign state. Iran's affairs should be decided independently by the Iranian people. China supports safeguarding Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity, and calls on the international community to support the Iranian government and people in overcoming current difficulties and in maintaining national security and social stability. The use of force can never solve problems. It will only make them more complex and intractable. Any military adventurism would only push the region toward an unpredictable abyss. We urge the United States to abide by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, abandon its fixation on the use of force, and call on all parties to exercise restraint and work together to play their due role in maintaining international peace and security. At present, the Middle East remains the most fragile region in the global security landscape, with the risks of turmoil and conflict persistently high. The people of the region have a strong desire for peace and development. China has noted the grave concerns expressed by the vast majority of regional countries regarding military confrontation, as well as their sincere expectation for resolving disputes peacefully through dialogue. China hopes that the United States and other relevant parties will take seriously the voices of the international community and regional countries and do more for peace and stability in the Middle East, rather than the opposite. All countries should play a constructive role in promoting peace and ending conflicts, avoid exacerbating tensions, and refrain from adding fuel to the fire. We call on the international community to stand on the right side of history and on the side of fairness and justice, and work tirelessly for peace and stability in the Middle East and peace and tranquility in the world. Thank you, President.